Communication among various cultures has developed in different directions, and language, which is the most complex component of the communication process, has developed over time. There are several theories about the origin of language. Some believe that the first language was born in Africa, in the age before the first migration, dating back over 1,000 years. According to some scientists, it says our ancestors migrated from Africa before language acquisition. It was only after that when different groups, independent of each other, started to communicate using the word and creating different languages. Whatever the truth is, communication or the first languages evolved, creating over 6,000 languages in the world. The role of the interpreter has ancient origins. In the past, the interpreter was required only when there were comprehension problems. The oldest references of interpreters dates back to the 3rd century BC. It is an epitaph for the Princess of Elephantine. The Princess of Elephantine did not know the languages of neighboring tribes, and for this reason they surrounded themselves with dragomans. During Roman times, the state paid the interpreters every month in order to manage public administration. In addition, the interpreters were fundamental in public speeches because they translated to Latin, the mother tongue of the empire. In medieval times, however, the interpreting profession was highly valued. They, at that time, naturally only provided chuchotage interpreting. Another period that played a large role in the advancement of interpreting was the Age of Exploration. Luis de Torres was Christopher Columbus' interpreter because he foresaw a possible encounter with Kublai Khan. Luis was able to talk in Hebrew and Arabic. In the following travels discovering America, Columbus used the indigenous people as interpreters. One of the oldest documents referring to interpreters seen as professional figures was found in the compilation of the laws of the kingdoms of the Indies. In this document, there are several rules that interpreters should have respected. Clarity and objectivity were the fundamental requirements for interpreters. According to some testimonies, the languages more widely used by interpreters in the 18th century were French, Dutch, and the local Indian languages. After World War I, the communicative needs were growing, and the time to translate had to be limited. For these reasons, in the 20s, radio broadcasting equipment was created. Only in this way could interpreters have translated simultaneously during international congresses. The first field test of simultaneous interpreting took place during the 6th Comintern Congress in the Soviet Union. Nowadays, the technique of consecutive interpreting is widely used, especially in bilateral meetings, but simultaneous interpreting is very widespread. As translation always existed, the first translation attempt took place in Asia, where terracotta boards engraved with a list of words in different languages were found. The history of translation is based on the way it has changed over time. Cicero, translating speeches by Demosthenes, poses the fundamental question in the history of translation. Should one be faithful to the words of the text or to its truth? The first school for translators was in Toledo, but the first theoretical statement on translation was the treatise by Leonardo Bruni, De Interpretatione Recta, the right way to translate. In this work, the interpreter was referred to as an invisible figure for the first time. During the 12th century, the most significant country which focused on the importance of translation was France. Over the 18th and 19th century, also Germany becomes a center regarding translation debates. During the 20th century, Benedetto Croce and Walter Benjamin contributed with their philosophical thought. Croce was the first to analyze the problems of translation. In the 1950s, a new chapter begins for science of translation, thanks to the invention of the first computer. All translation studies led us to a real theory of translation, a theory based on practice, observation, and study. Translation has always been a way to understand different cultures. Translation has traditionally been perceived as an interlingual communication. A translation is not just about a switch between languages, but especially about cultures. The translator should keep in mind not only grammar rules, but also the different cultural elements of the text. Nowadays, what are the most requested languages? Despite English becoming a fundamental requirement for all people who are looking for a job, often knowing English is not enough to communicate in all working environments. It is important to underline that each working sector has different needs in languages, and sometimes the knowledge of more foreign languages is required. The second most used language in international meetings is Spanish. Spanish is becoming even more the language of the future. For this, studying Spanish means investing in the market. This language is spoken by 495 million people and is currently the mother tongue of many countries, including the USA, Canada, Brazil, and the Philippines. The most required language is Mandarin Chinese. Who chooses to study Chinese must have a strong visual memory in order to memorize the great number of Chinese characters. Chinese writing is a huge obstacle in learning, but there are other problems. Fortunately, China has adopted a simplified writing system called Pinyin, making learning easier. Only way to truly learn this fascinating language is to go abroad, travel with a backpack and a one-way ticket to Shanghai. Learning more than a language, being able to speak in Arabic, Portuguese, or in Chinese is not only a particular skill in the curriculum vitae. Many studies have shown that to study and be able to speak in different languages increases learning and comprehension skills. Moreover, it helps the nervous system, benefiting the brain at all stages of life. Knowing languages makes finding a job easier and enriches our knowledge about different cultures and religions, allowing to socialize and fully appreciate visited countries.